So thanks for giving me this opportunity, or giving us this opportunity to present our journey towards data-driven Kaizen, how we call it. And before we get into the details, I think it's important for at least some of us to understand what exactly is Kaizen, irrespective of our background. So Kaizen is a Japanese philosophy championed by Toyota, typically, which means continuous improvements day in and day out in your operations in any department in your organization. The philosophy was championed by Toyota and quickly adapted by the entire Japanese manufacturing industry, and popularized, or globalized rather, in 80s and 90s by Masaki Imai, the founder of Kaizen Institute. Now, this whole Kaizen philosophy, it actually works on 5 key principles. Number 1 is, whatever you do, keep your end customer in mind. Second, go to Gemba. Gemba is again a Japanese word, which means the actual place where the action is happening. So in case of a manufacturing scenario, for example, it's the shop floor, because that's where the manufacturing happens. Followed by smooth flow of the processes. So it talks about your processes should be free of any bottlenecks, which talk about elimination of any wastes in your processes. And we'll see more about it in the next slide. Fourth principle is, you have to be objective in your assessments when you bring out those Kaizen initiatives. You have to speak with data points. It should not be subjective. And lastly, you have to empower your teams on the shop floor to take certain decisions to bring about day-to-day improvements. So these are the 5 key principles of Kaizen. To understand why Kaizen is complex, let's try to understand one of the principles in a bit of details. Let's talk about elimination of muri, mura, and muda. Again, these are Japanese terms. Muri means overburdening of your resources. Mura means there is a lot of variation in your processes, so that means less standardization in your processes. Muda typically means a lot of wastes in your system. So the waste could be due to overproduction. It could be due to unnecessary transportation of goods from one place to another. It could be because a lot of waiting time is involved. It could be because of non-productive movement of people or resources on the shop floor going from one place to another. It could be because of unnecessary processing and so on. So there are 7 kinds of waste which have been identified. Now, what are the typical challenges associated with Kaizen? As you would have understood, right, identifying these 9 kind of ways, muri, muda, and muda, it's not easy. It's a time and a very skill-intensive process. You need actually process champions to spend weeks and months to identify those bottlenecks or those wastes in the system and think about possible solutions to eliminate them. Secondly, not all the times you have the holistic view of data, right? Because you may be seeing data in silos in many points in time. So you may lose visibility of end-to-end process, and that in turn may lead to deprioritization or misprioritization of your goals. So let's see what's happening in Yamanashi with this background. So let me take you to land of Kaizen, Japan. There's a beautiful view of Mount Fuji from one of our factories, which is called Fujitsu Eye Network Systems, having a very strong pedigree in manufacturing for about 75 years, 350 employees. And what do we manufacture? Well, not the cell towers, but the PCBs, which you see on the right-hand side of the screen, which actually go into the transponders. And these transponders are placed at the bottom of your cell phone towers, which help them to communicate with other cell phone towers through optical fibers. So as you would have understood, assembly of this PCB board is a highly complex process and needs very high quality and very high reliability of the end product. Otherwise, it would have a direct impact on our communications. Before we get into the next slides, I thought it would be prudent to give you a view of the shop floor so you get a context of the things to come. So this is an actual image of our shop floor in Yamanashi. It's a highly automated shop floor. We use a lot of robots for performing pick and drop operations, for example. And there's a lot of human element involved as well, especially for some parts of assembly and inspection operations as such. And so keeping in line with a spirit of innovation and continuous improvement, Kaizen, if you look at the digital transformation journey in Yamanashi, you would see over a period of, say, 7 to 8 years, multiple initiatives have been taken, be it related to AI or creating a digital twin or OT security, anomaly visualization. So all of these initiatives have been taken over the past 7 to 8 to 10 years. It's a continuous improvement which keeps on happening on the shop floor. And that brings me to the next chapter, which is the data mines. So because of these initiatives, what we got actually at the end of the day was we had a lot of data puddles instead of data lake. You have to understand one thing: these initiatives were performed in different points in time to address different point problems. So not necessarily you had a view of the future when you were implementing one of the solutions, right? So what we got was point solutions which were not connected to each other. So for example, the one on the left that you see, it's a solution to track the lot movements on the shop floor using smart cameras and QR codes. One on the top, you have the machine data collection happening, which tracks the start and stop of the operations directly from the machines. And the one on the right, for example, is an AI system to read whether there are any humans present for what duration of time to track their operator productivity, for example. So different initiatives, different point in times, completely disconnected. As a result, this is what we get. Completely incomprehensible data. If you can look at it and you can give any insights, well, I would really recommend you. But this is just a bunch of timestamps. We have AI initiatives and IoT initiatives, and what we are getting is how the process is happening by every 30 minutes, every 15 minutes. So really very, very difficult to get any insight from this data. So we were at this point in our journey in Yamanashi when an interesting development happened in November last year. Fujitsu signed a partnership with Signavio, and it was a strategic partnership. And folks at Yamanashi said, keeping in line with the spirit of innovation and Kaizen, well, why not try Signavio and see if they can address this problem to have all of these initiatives bound in a single thread. And that is what led us to the next chapter, which is trying to find gold in those data mines. We thought before we proceed, let's try to create a framework. Let's do it methodically. So we created a 6-step framework for data-driven Kaizen, because we wanted to move away from the traditional way of doing Kaizens because of the challenges that I just mentioned. So the first step is we carry out an assessment. We understand where you are currently, where you want to be, what are your challenges in achieving your goals. The second step is the heart of this entire framework, and it talks about lean manufacturing inspired analysis, because this is where we talk to different personas, different people on the shop floor, trying to understand what are the different kind of waste, or as I said, muri, mura, and muda, which are generated during the process, and what are the possibilities of elimination of those wastes. And based on those possibilities, we try to find out what are the data requirements that would be required. Once we have that, we try to do a POC to see whether Signavio can actually give any meaningful insights, can help us discover the unknowns. And if the POC is successful, you go to an entire live project with the full-blown data, and finally you build a business case, you try it out in different lines, in different factories, and try to prioritize your Kaizen initiative. As I said, misprioritization of Kaizen initiatives was one of the challenges. So can it be used to prioritize your Kaizen initiatives? So talking about Yamanashi, the initial assessment. So as I said, they manufacture PCBs. It's a 6-7 step process. Starts with the SMT machines, which are basically putting those small components that you saw in the image on the circuit board, followed by an automated inspection, followed by a manual inspection. Then you have the label printing, finally a final inspection before you do the packing and dispatching of the boards. All of this is done keeping in view 3 Kaizen goals of improving quality, reducing the delivery lead times, and reducing the overall cost of delivery. Now, the second step, which talks about lean manufacture inspired line of analysis. So as I said, we spoke to multiple personas on the shop floor. So we spoke to line supervisors, factory managers, quality controllers, and the priorities are different for different people, right? So for example, for line supervisors, the priority was whether my operators are overburdened or not, whether there's a variation, both in terms of process, how it is happening, as well as variation in terms of worker productivity, whether the productivity varies over the months or it varies with the different product types, for example. Whether there is unnecessary motion, movement of people and goods happening on the shop floor leading to increased stat. Are your goods waiting unnecessarily to be processed? Could be because of bottlenecks which are down the line, or could be because of lack of resources. The factory manager, on the other hand, is more interested in knowing, can I save some money by reducing work in progress, for example? Or can I reduce over processing of goods if it is required? A quality controller was more interested in knowing, can better process compliance, for example, lead to better product quality? So these are some examples, or these are some of the line of analysis which we follow with different personas to identify the target areas of improvements. And with this, we came up with the POC approach. So there were 6 target areas identified out of quality, delivery, and cost. And we selected operator productivity just because of the simple reason it's a fairly easy KPI to understand, and it's kind of a no-brainer, very easy to explain it to top management as well. And very interesting insights we got. For example, we understood that when the operators are having more workload, the throughput or the turnaround time is less, which means we perform better when we are under stress, if I have to say in other words. The second observation was there's a lot of uneven productivity between operators, even though they are of the same experience level. So that clearly helps us to identify training needs for a few operators. And lastly, the operators showed a zigzag pattern of productivity. So 1 month it goes up, and second month it drops down, and then again it goes up, and then it drops down. So which was quite strange. Now, some of these findings were known to line supervisor or operators, but they didn't have the real data points to actually, bring it in front of the management. So that was a real insight for the shop floor guys. Another important insight, what we could gather was the segregation of duties between different softwares we are using at the shop floor. So as I said, we already had a lot of softwares, especially those are related to shop floor process reporting, which helps you to identify what is the status of my KPIs, what is the current state of my work process, what is the trend of my KPIs, whether I'm performing well or I'm getting worse. But how process mining or SAP Signavio helps us to identify why my KPIs are going up or why my KPIs are going down. So because it helps us to identify the repetitive work which is happening. It helps us to identify those non-productive loops which are happening or non-productive movements which are happening on the shop floor. It helps to understand the bottlenecks which exist on the shop floor, or the deviant processes which are existing on the shop floor, right? Which you can improve to achieve the goals of waiting time, less waiting time and better cycle time, and so on and so forth. So this was an important takeaway, and we spent considerable amount of time in explaining, how these two softwares can coexist on the shop floor and how they both are working towards different goals completely. And we moved on with the success of the POC. We moved on to the next step, the examination time. We were able to actually combine the data from different data sources. We were able to bind them in a single thread with the help of a unique identifier in the form of barcode ID of the PCB or the end product that was manufactured. And we were able to upload it in Signavio. And what we discovered just amazed us, because the process that seemed so linear, those 6-7 steps, suddenly has a lot of arms and legs and branches, and it looks like it's going haywire, going here and there and everywhere, right? So that was a real shock to the people at the shop floor, positively shocked, because now they could actually identify the opportunities of improvement working at the shop floor. And some of the images of happy customers, you can't see the smile because of the mask, but believe me, they were really happy when they saw those insights. So this particular image is one of the line supervisors, and he's using the process conformance widget, which is there in Signavio, which is actually overlaying the as-is process versus what was actually thought it to be. And he can actually see those deviations happening on the shop floor. And another one, so this image here is very important, because this is the typical, the physical area actually where those Kaizen meetings happen. So this is a Kaizen stand-up desk. And suddenly we saw the usage of Signavio in those Kaizen meetings, in those stand-up desks. And we realized that this is the first step towards moving from a very traditional way of doing Kaizen towards, moving towards data-driven Kaizen. I had spoken about, after we finished the actual project, how do we prioritize? What is the final benefit that we get of implementing data-driven Kaizen? So the best part was you can actually prioritize your Kaizen initiatives now. So what we did was we, with all the insights that we gathered, we created a methodology to prioritize them. We created a 2x2 matrix. The x-axis that you see below is actually the costs, which includes the technological as well as the change costs in implementing that change on the shop floor. And the y-axis here talks about the total savings that you can gain from implementing that change or that Kaizen initiative as such. So for example, the top left here, this quadrant talks about workload balancing. So very interesting story there, because what we saw was it was a Pareto which was happening. So, actually 20% of the operators were doing almost or were operating on 80% of the boards, which was a bit surprising, of course. But with the help of simulation feature in Signavio, we realized that if we can improve that ratio from 20% to say 35%, there's a chance of improving the throughput or the turnaround time by at least 4%. And so that was a no-brainer. We had to go for it immediately because it's just about, workload balancing, fairly easy to do, not much cost involved, just maybe a bit of supervision and better work assignment. So this was something which was taken up immediately. The top right corner here talks about the initiatives which are a bit costly but bring immense benefits. So you need to plan a bit for such initiatives. So for example, let me talk about the unnecessary movements here. You have to understand one thing. This factory of ours is like 75 years now, as I said, and we don't have the luxury of space. So when we are adding new lines, it's really in a very constrained space. So there are work areas designated when you have to place work in product goods for waiting, right? So, but what happens if there are bottlenecks down the line and you don't have enough space left? So there is a workload coming from the previous steps, but it can't be processed because there are bottlenecks in the line ahead. So you keep them in non-designated areas. And when the turn comes for these goods to be processed, they have to be moved from non-designated areas to the actual designated areas. So that leads to unnecessary movements. And what we realized that we can actually cut down that by about 25%. Next was waiting time. We saw a lot of goods because, again, of the bottlenecks, they're just waiting in their designated areas for a lot of time, which leads to longer throughput, right, for the process. The the bottom left is an initiative which again has low cost, but it is bringing not so much of savings as such. And interesting observation was the workers in shift 2 were a bit low on their productivity as compared to workers in shift 1, which was again unexpected. And we thought that if we could again probably find out the root cause, give some trainings, and do better workload balancing, maybe there's an opportunity to improve the output by 3 to 5% here. So that's how we used to, that's the metrics we use to prioritize our Kaizen initiatives. So how did we move from traditional to data-driven Kaizen? So we spoke about these 3 challenges that you see on my left. We said it's a very time and skill intensive process, but with Signavio, suddenly you have this intuitive user interface, very easy to use filters, very easy to use screens, and insights are available in a flash, right? So you reduce the time and you reduce the skill as well, provided you are asking the right questions, because Signavio will only answer what you ask it, right? Secondly, we spoke about lack of holistic data. Now suddenly you can see with a bit of data transformation, that's a bit of a manual exercise at the moment, but we are building automation scripts to automate that part as well. So we can do data transformation, and all of those different data sets can be suddenly be one cohesive data set for your analysis. And obviously I showed you the matrix for prioritization of your Kaizen objectives. Now, what all this leads to is, this is a very important point for you to understand, it leads to frequent and better Kaizen cycles, right? So initially what you used to do is you might say, okay, let's challenge this assumption and let's improve this waste in the system, and let's do it, and let's observe after 3 months what's happening. Now with the help of data, with the help of immediate analysis, you can maybe shorten that time frame. You can see improvements every week, because you just have to put in data, and once the KPIs are set, you can immediately see it. You can see the bottlenecks. You don't have to observe it for like weeks and months. You can actually see where the problem areas are, and you can have better and frequent Kaizen cycles with this. Cherry on the cake was the feedback from the shop floor team. Of course, the Kaizen engineers were like, okay, we never expected these kind of processes. A very optimistic one was given by the digital transformation head. He said, I feel I don't need a data engineer now to process all of my data. I feel it's a bit optimistic, but it's a nice feedback to have. And interesting observation here made by the line manager, where he said that he would like to use the simulation feature of Signavio in order to better plan his shifts, how the operators are coming, and he would like to optimize the order of production. So he said he would like to use that feature, which was quite new for me as well, the use case. Finally, bringing to the closure, which talks about the challenges or the learnings from this whole exercise that we did at Yamanashi. Number one, always involve the shop floor guys along with the top floor guys when you are dealing with shop floor initiatives. So in our case, when we went to the CEO with the POC findings, so there was only one question which the CEO asked to the bunch of line supervisors, managers over there: can you actually improve the turnaround time by 5% with this? A very affirmative answer given by the line supervisors, and the answer was, and we got the go ahead to do the final project, because this is something which is impacting their core business, right? So you have to take along the shop floor workers before you actually present your case to the higher managers. So involve them early, understand the data, understand the variations. There might be valid variations as well. So you need to involve them early on in the journey. Secondly, manufacturing is evolving. A lot of IoT, AI, multiple initiatives are happening right now. So you might have a lot of data points, but don't try to use all data points in Signavio, because you have to bind them by a common thread. It's okay to leave some of the data points. It's perfectly okay. Look for the lower hanging fruits first, and probably slowly you can try to find ways to include other data points as well. And lastly, use the simulation feature wisely, because, for example, the time between two steps that you get, it will also include the waiting time, time for changeover, etc. So when you are using the simulation feature for 4 sites, take care of what is the exact time duration that you have to change, that you have to consider. Otherwise, you would be thrown off the track. So we spoke about data-driven Kaizen powered by Signavio. So what Signavio has to do with the entire Kaizen framework is shown in this slide. If you look at the right-hand side, the green colored part of it, these are how the Signavio's tools overlay with Kaizen principles. So you have the customer journey modeler in Signavio, wherein you can envisage the entire customer journey end to end. You have the process intelligence feature, which you can use to kind of create a digital twin, I would say, or a virtual twin, whatever you may call it, which will mirror kind of what is actually happening on the shop floor, help you to uncover the hidden shop floor, as we call it. You can use process conformance and use the variants to understand where are the waste, where are the bottlenecks, so you can eliminate them in future. You always, of course, use data and APIs to get multiple data points in Signavio, so you speak with data. Thus, you can use the simulation feature, which I have spoken multiple times, to create foresights. For example, if you want to go for an expansion plan, add more products or add more employees, how will it impact your throughput? If you have to see these kind of things, you can always use simulation, which will give you, well, not 100% accurate, but you will get some sense. At least you will get a direction where you're headed, right? And lastly, you can use Signavio Collaboration Hub. It's a single workspace wherein you can seek feedback from the team members involved and actually incorporate that feedback into your process flows. So that's how you can actually empower the team who's working on the processes.